Hey everyone, welcome back to the Abominables. Now I really liked my question on Friday. How long do you think the journey will take? And a lot of people put maybe 1 day, 20 hours. And then we had our morning meeting and we talked about, well, it can't take that long. It's going to need to take a lot longer. One person said maybe they won't take too long because they're hibernated. But if we really listened, they're not hibernating anymore, are they? So we're up to chapter 6. This is called Aslarfan. The yellow lorry drove on, day after day, down through the foothills of the Himalayas, across the burning plains of India and Pakistan, across Afghanistan with its stony mountains and wild goats and poplar trees, and through the deserts of Iran, where the sand got into the Yetis' nostrils and between their toes and into their food. It was not an easy journey. The Yetis had to be sealed up inside the truck until night time, when they found a deserted place to stop and they could come out and stretch their legs and get some air. The lorry was bumpy, and every so often Clarence said, "Ick, ick," and then Perry would have to quickly try and find a place where a Yeti could be sick without anybody seeing, which was not so easy at all. And of course Herbert, who had to be fed from a bottle every 4 hours and then turned upside down because he'd swallowed the teat, was just as much of a nuisance as Con had foreseen, so predicted. But after a while the Yetis got a taste for travelling. Sitting around the campfire at the end of the day, listening to Perry strum his guitar and pushing Herbert's hooves out of the butter, they felt that this really was the life. But when the Yetis had said sorry to the last of their condensed milk tins and laid down under the stars to sleep, Con and Ellen always took turns to stay awake so that no one should come on the Yetis unexpectedly. Nor would they ever let Perry take his turn, however much he grumbled, because they knew that driving a truck for great distances was the most exhausting thing in the world and that he needed his sleep. And in this way they travelled very happily until they came to the city of Aslarfan, the capital of the state of Aslarfan, which is wedged like a slice of melon between Iran and Turkey. Although the Yetis couldn't see out, they began to feel queer almost as soon as they crossed the border. Grandma had said her corns were shooting and she didn't like the way her liver was carrying on, so her body's hurting. Lucy kept nervously twisting Queen Victoria and her 9 children in her long, blonde fingers. Uncle Otto's face was set and stern. "I don't like this place. It feels funny," said Ambrose the abominable. Con and Ellen, sitting in the front of the cab, liked it even less. They were approaching the city now. There were beggars everywhere. The people had grey faces. Half-starved mongrel dogs dodged in and out of the traffic. It was dusty and hot, and suddenly Ellen drew in her breath because an old man had just crossed the road leading a poor, mangy, limping bear on a chain so tight that he looked as if he was about to choke. So there's some guy pulling a bear on a chain. This is terrible. "It's a dancing bear," Percy explained, while Con made sure that the peephole to the back was tightly shut. "On their way to the palace, I expect. They jab them and put hot coals in their mouths and make them dance for money. Aslarfan's the only place left in the world where you're allowed to do that." And he explained to the children that Aslarfan was ruled by a cruel and greedy sultan who lived in luxury in his palace with a fleet of cars and aeroplanes and yachts. The Sultan Middle had 500 embroidered shirts and 1,200 pairs of trousers and 3 fat wives covered from top to toe in diamonds. But his people lived in poverty and squalor. Instead of building schools and hospitals, the Sultan had huge feasts in which everybody gorged themselves till they were sick and then began again. Instead of looking after the old and needy, he organised great hunts in which hundreds of beautiful gazelles and antelopes were cruelly slaughtered. Everybody hated him. Nobody dared to protest because they would have just been put in jail or shot. "All I ever want to do in Aslarfan," said Perry, "is get through as quickly as possible." But Perry reckoned without the lorry. Perry's lorries looked all right from the outside, but inside it was more like an ailing old lady than a 40-ton truck. Its carburetor got choked up as soon as you breathed on it. Its exhaust pipe hung on by willpower and string, and the engine sounded like an old hen with the croup. And now, just when they wanted to get through Aslarfan quickly, the wretched lorry began to boil. So the truck's sort of falling apart. It's old, it's choking, it's smoking. Think of that when you see an old yucky truck. That's what's happening. They don't want these people in Aslarfan to find the Yetis. We know that it's a place where bears can be tied up in chains and treated really cruelly. But it was. We'll have to spend the night here, I'm afraid, while I get this thing fixed, said Perry worriedly. I'll find as quiet a place to park as I can, but for goodness sake, don't let the Yetis out. You saw that bear. So he parked on a quiet street not far from the Sultan's palace. Beside it was a little park with a few dusty date palms, tobacco kiosk, and public toilet. And the far side, something else, a zoo. The Yetis had never before had to spend a night in a town, let alone a town like Aslathan. It meant that they couldn't get out and say, sorry grass, and build a campfire and stretch their legs. They had to stay cooped in the lorry, which was stiflingly hot because Perry had disabled the refrigerator system to get the water pump. And the Yetis understood that it was necessary, and they were very good. While Perry went to find a garage and Con went shopping for some fruit, Ellen slipped into the little park to buy some lemonade for the Yetis in a kiosk. When she came back, she was very quiet and pale. Oh. Are you sad? Said Ambrose, as his brown eyes got ready in case there was any crying to be done. But Ellen just shook her head and said it was nothing, or perhaps the heat. And then Con returned, and they had a picnic in the back, and they were just getting ready for bedtime story when the noises began. I wonder what the noises are. Now we know they're in a town where the rich people have big parties. We know they're near a zoo and it's night time. Is it maybe just the local people? So my question to you is, what is the noise? Maybe people know about this truck and that it could be something dodgy in it. So maybe army or something's coming after it. So what is the noise? Good luck with answering this question.